Now, shortly after this news, the stock market closed at a 327-point high. However, this may not be a positive thing for us. Yellen is well known on Wall Street, but would a Wall Street bigwig actually be able to fix our pandemic-stricken economy? Or would she just help feed the swamp creatures? Joining me now from Dallas, Texas, financial expert and co-founder and chief strategist of GDP Advisors, Seth Denson. Seth, it's great to see you. Seth, I guess this pick would be better than Senator Elizabeth Warren, who made it clear that she really wanted this position.
Yeah, I think, listen, if that's the way that we're balancing this, I'll take Janet Yellen every day of the week and twice on Sunday. Listen, I think that what you're seeing in the market today is a recognition of the fact that Janet Yellen is a known figure, right? We had her time at the Fed that we can look from. She's got respect on both sides of the aisle. While for those of us who tend to be deficit hawks, we don't love the fact that oftentimes she said that we can continue to borrow money because interest rates are low. At the same time, she has shown herself, at least she did at the Fed, to be somewhat fiscally responsible and push for fiscal responsibility.
Yeah, and obviously the markets like stability, and some were saying that, oh, well, you know, either way, Wall Street's going to be good, whether it's Biden or Trump in this election.
Well, I don't know that it's a guarantee, right? But I think as more and more we move forward, we're seeing that maybe Biden isn't going to be looking to the far left to be pulling people in. That's part one. And part two is, again, so long as Republicans can hold the Senate, the idea of a radical left agenda coming forward is not likely. And so the current tax structure hopefully can remain stable in the current positive business climate as well.
Yeah, and I guess what's really disappointing is you look at Biden's picks, and it's all recycled people from the Obama administration. So it would be business as usual. So, I mean, if you loved Obama's economy, I guess you would love a Biden economy.
Seems like a 2.0 version, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I mean, again, I think that from a market perspective, and strictly a market perspective, this is a positive, at least in the short term. And it's a positive only because it kind of feels like we've been here before. We know how to play this game. It's not the unknown of an AOC-like person on the cabinet. That being said, again, the reason we're seeing the recovery that we are seeing, that the market is doing what it's doing, is in large part because of the efforts put forth by the Trump administration to put our economic platform on a good footing. And so my hope is, as we see these picks continuously rolled out, that we don't reverse that course and go in opposite direction.
Yeah, and certainly there are challenging times ahead of us, considering we're still in the middle of a pandemic. We're seeing new rounds of restrictions, and a lot of businesses are closing because of it. Now, hopes for a coronavirus vaccine are creating market winners and losers. Who's winning and who's losing?
Well, again, this goes back to short-term versus long-term. I think the current opportunity is for those stocks that didn't do well at the onset of the pandemic, things like airline stocks and cruise stocks and those things like that. These, if you're looking for a long-term buy, these might be a good thing to add to your portfolio, in large part because they're down in some cases 50, 60, even as much as 70%. That being said, I wouldn't look for these to be short-term winners that are going to bounce back quickly. We're still in a pandemic. It's going to take time for a vaccine to get rolled out. But if you're wanting to add some stocks to your portfolio that are some long-term gainers, I think there's an opportunity to buy some on sale today.
Yeah. There's a lot of question about the vaccine and will Americans be forced to take the vaccine. I've asked a lot of lawmakers and politicians. They don't think that the U.S. would take this route. But I saw that there was an airline, this is international air, for international air travelers who are considering having anyone who's flying on their planes to have a vaccine before they fly.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of the federal government mandating things like vaccines, but I'm okay if the private sector does it. And again, the reason I say that is I'm okay for the private sector to regulate itself as much as possible and keep the government out of it. So I'm going to eat my own cooking here and say if there's a private sector organization that says, hey, you want to come in and you want to do business with us, these are the requirements, I'm okay with that. By the way, no shirt, no shoes, no service, not a federal regulation either. That's private sector getting to decide that that's the way they want to run business.
Yeah, and according to polling, some 30% of Americans say they don't want to take the vaccine. So we'll see what happens with we'll have to see what happens with air travel and that. Now, I wanted to ask you about Bitcoin. Apparently, it's closing in on an all-time high. We've seen this before. It's kind of like deja vu.
Yeah, listen, I'm the anti-Bitcoin guy. I'm sorry. They're never going to peg me for a commercial for this because to me, it's out of thin air. Who regulates it? Where'd it come from? Who's not going to create more of it? Again, there's no gold standard. There's no back by the dollar here. I want something firm that I can understand what its value is, and Bitcoin just doesn't do that for me.
What do you think are the biggest flaws of Bitcoin? You said you want to know what its value is. And I think what I'm mostly concerned about is how one day it could be fine and then there's constant regulations and lawmakers are always cracking down on it. So you just never know if your coin's going to be worth something the next day.
Yeah, it went from 19,000 to 3,000 back to 19,000. It's the volatility of it because there's no transparency in it. Again, there's nothing tangible to put up against it. This is effectively a computer programmed currency system that someone created. And who's to say somebody's not going to come around tomorrow and create a new one? That's the issue here. There's nothing tangible to it.
Yeah. So you're saying you don't have like a digital wallet and you never invested in a Bitcoin? Because some
No.
Bitcoin people are pretty happy.
I am not on board. No.
All good points. Thank you.
Thanks, Steph.